Deputy Ríordáin.
Thank you, Ceann Corda. I suppose in Ireland we're in a unique position in between Brexit and Trump to give a different view to the world of the nature of discrimination, of the nature of our own experience. Because of our own history, we are the people of famine ships, we are the people who have gone to every corner of the world. We understand the immigrant experience like no other. That is why it is deeply disappointing when people who are in this House use racism, use fear, use language to punch down. Racism is about power. It's about sometimes trying to isolate a group that you feel is not powerful because you can, and therefore to get power to yourself. We have people in this House, TDs in this House, who have said things such as that asylum seekers are freeloaders, blackguards and hoodlums. We have people in this House who have said that asylum seekers need to be deprogrammed. We have people in this House who have said that asylum seekers are here to sponge off the system. We have two members of a governing party who have been on the wrong side of anti-traveller literature controversies. One of them sits at Cabinet. And we had a Fine Gael councillor a number of years ago who said that he would not deal with black Africans. Public statement. He lost the whip for 18 months. So I think what we need to do in our own political system is to call out the hypocrisy of standing in a parliament like this, full of white people, and saying as racism is something that other people do, because it's what politicians here in Ireland do. And the reaction to racism amongst public representatives is often, well, he or she wasn't speaking for the party. And then we move on. And then there's this sort of sense that, well, that's not racist, that's different. Or anti-traveller racism is not racism, it's different. The first time I ran for election at Ceann Corda was in 2004 in the local elections, which coincided with the 2004 citizenship referendum proposed by Fianna Fáil and supported by Fine Gael. And it was a deliberate attempt, in my mind, to punch down at a suspicion or to amplify a suspicion that you cannot trust an asylum seeker, because there was suggestions that there were heavily pregnant asylum seekers in Ireland here purely to get citizenship for their children. And we had a constitutional referendum. Can you imagine it? On the same day as the local election. And you can only imagine the type of poison that unleashed. So please not stand here in this auditorium, in this parliament, in this assembly, and say that racism is what other people in Irish society do and we have no part in it. Because we do. I don't think people and political parties in this parliament should be going to fundraisers in America and taking money off racist Trump supporters. I don't think it's good enough. I think we have to call out Irish America about their support for the current President of the United States. I think we have to call out Irish communities in Britain who are so anti-immigrant, which is so hypocritical. It's astounding. But if we don't take that stand, who is? And how can we go to the United States on St. Patrick's Day and hand over bowls of shamrock and advocate for the undocumented in America who are Irish and not do the very same here, the 26,000 or so who are undocumented workers here in Ireland? Of course, once again, they are vulnerable, they are poorly paid, they are in vulnerable work. Daniel O'Connell once said about the Irish slave owner, How can the generous, the charitable, the humane and the noble emotions of the Irish heart have come extinct within you? But I think it's important then for our current generation of Irish leaders to speak to Irish American or Anglo-Irish or Irish-Australian politicians all over the world who engage in racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant sentiment and speak to that Irish heart and speak to that Irish experience of the coffin ship, of the discrimination, of being on the lowest rung and of being punched down. So what can we do? I've mentioned that we need to work on the regularisation of undocumented migrants. We need to pass the Traveller, Culture and History and Education Bill, not just for traveller children, but for all Irish children. We need to legislate for citizenship for children born here. We don't need a new referendum to overturn what was happened in 2004. 2004 just enabled this Assembly to pass whatever legislation it wished to do. So we need to change that. We need to ensure that we do have citizenship rights for every child who is born here. We need to extend the right to work for asylum seekers by removing the erroneous barriers that exist to working here if you are an asylum seeker. And we need to legislate against hate speech. The Minister has spoken about the 1989 Act, which has been proven to be effectively useless. And we have tried, and a number of agencies have tried, and lobby groups have tried over a number of years in order to get better, more robust hate speech, hate crime legislation, and it hasn't been successful. And now is the time to do it. And I've spoken previously about the importance of having our Dáil, our Seanad, our teaching profession, our Garda profession, and other public service professions to reflect the population that they serve. And it's not good enough for us to say that that is an aspiration. It is important that we actually do something about it. Because if you are an Irish Nigerian child, or you are an Irish Polish child, or you are an Irish traveller child, how powerful would it be to have somebody in your classroom teaching you who looks just like you? As has been said, if you're white, and particularly if you're male, the world is run by people who look just like you. And the television is full of people who look just like you. But if you're not, it can be a very cold place, and it can feel as if you don't fit in. Now, we've had a bad history of this with people with particular accents, particular addresses, and obviously from the travelling community. But now is the opportunity we have to make our public broadcaster more reflective of the population, our teaching profession, guards, and again, this Assembly. And there's no reason why, with 11 appointments due to be made to the Seanad in a number of weeks, why we couldn't put the fine words of the Minister's speech into action and actually appoint somebody to the Seanad, to these houses of Oireachtas, from these minority communities, rather than a party political hack, which is inevitably what's going to happen. How powerful would it be to have somebody from the black community in Ireland sitting in the Seanad, or from the traveller community in Ireland sitting in the Seanad, because the Taoiseach has made it a priority? Or will we just go back to the way we were? Because running for elections and getting elected is important, and if punching down on asylum seekers or immigrants or travellers is what gets you there, well then, that's just the way the system works. So I would suggest that we all, and it has been said, look, all of us have our prejudices. Anybody who stands up here and says that they don't have prejudices is telling lies, because we all have. We all grew up in this country. We all know about the sectarianism that exists in this country, the anti-traveller sentiment, the prejudices that are all around us. And we all feel them, and often we let ourselves down by using them. But certainly the political system could do an awful lot more than just the words that are spoken here today.